What's up, family? Namaste. Good morning. Hope everything is going well. Hope you're blessed, moving closer to God. Hope you're growing, succeeding in life, being the best you can be. This morning, we're going to talk about something that I find to be very important because I tend to promote oftentimes that we need to sometimes walk away from the world. And what I mean by that is that sometimes we need to really take some time out away from everybody and away from everything to find out, who we are, you know, especially if we're trying to move closer into God, then one of the things that's often blocking us is our ego, what's going on inside of us, those past hurts and pains and all those things. I like to, sort of liken our journey spiritually unto a caterpillar and a butterfly. I'll tell you a story. There was this caterpillar, and the caterpillar had been crawling for miles. It had been crawling across the hot pavement, the grass, through the mud, snow, the rain, etc., etc. And one day the caterpillar is crawling through the park, and it looks up and it sees a butterfly, sitting on one of the tree branches. And so the caterpillar stops in amazement and says, wow, you are beautiful. I sure wish I could be like you. And the butterfly thinks for a minute and then says, well, to be honest, there's no real difference between you and I. The only difference is I went through the process. So the caterpillar asks the butterfly, well, what is the process? And the butterfly says, well, you have to cocoon yourself for a season. So the caterpillar thinks about it, and sort of looks back over the journey and says, well, how bad could it be? When I look back over my journey and everything I've been through, taking some time out to go through this process can't be that bad. So the caterpillar agrees and builds this cocoon and goes in and goes through the process. And the process of a caterpillar becoming a butterfly, it's sort of odd. It's sort of weird to me because what happens is the caterpillar actually excretes, or I guess it secretes, however you say it, a chemical fluid out of its body. And that very fluid actually eats away at the caterpillar's body. While at the same time, another process is sort of taking place where the butterfly body is being created at the same time. And I sort of look at that as saying, like, it's sort of like when we're left alone unto ourselves, what we tend to find is that there's a lot of things inside of us that need to come out, a lot of things that we really need to deal with, a lot of those things that are sort of making up our ego. If we're going to become spiritual beings, we're going to have to face some of the things that are going on inside of us, challenge ourselves in those areas to eventually let that stuff go. And that's what happens when the caterpillar goes through its process of letting go of the old caterpillar mentality, vomiting up that old mentality and accepting and embracing the rebirth of the new thing, should I say, of the butterfly. The same thing with us. We have to be willing to bring up some of those hidden things about us, some of those hidden failures, some of those fears that we have, some of our weaknesses, our doubts, etc. We have to really be willing to go into a place where we can see ourselves and face ourselves and deal with ourselves. I tell people all the time, just look at the history of the spiritual men and women of God. If you think about, Gautama the Buddha, he had to go away from his kingdom, off into the wilderness. You think of Lao Tzu of China, the wilderness. You think of Moses. At some point, he had to go into the wilderness. You think of Paul, wilderness. Brother John in the Bible book of Revelations, trapped on the island of Patmos, shipwrecked. And of course, we know Jesus the Christ. Wilderness. And all of those moments where these men are led or sent into these wilderness places, it's really symbolic to say that these were the moments they entered into their cocoon to deal with the last remaining issues of self before they could move into that higher place. And that's what has to happen with us, you know. Because I feel like this. We could never go out and help people or teach people or lead people if we can't lead ourselves, if we can't govern ourselves. And sometimes we can't deal with ourselves because sometimes we don't know exactly what's going on with ourselves. And so whether it's simply for, you know, self-improvement or to move further in spirituality, it is very important that you have to take a moment away to know thyself. There are two knowing thyself that takes place when you're inside the cocoon. One knowing of thyself is when you know all that you've been in the past, when you really come to see that person that you've been, you know, the weaknesses, the failures, whatever. That's one knowing of thyself. And then after you face that self and dealt with that self, then there's another knowing of thyself. And the knowing of thyself at that level is the higher self. The self that's inspired, the self that's faithful, the self that's strong, the self that's determined, the self that's focused, the self that's in God. So knowing thyself is an important part of any forward movement. And knowing both selves, what you've been, but also knowing who you are in God, that's extremely important to go forward. So again, today, I just want to kind of take a minute just to sort of talk about the necessity of getting away from everything. You know, throughout life, we tend to blame so many people for our actions. You know, we made this decision because of this person, or we responded this way because of that person. When sometimes the very energies that we're really dealing with is our own energy, but we're failing to go within ourselves to see what those energies are. You know, I often tell people sometimes if you got a person that's continuously in drama and continuously, you know, angry and continuously going through situations, they can blame 100 people. But what I also find out is sometimes even when they're all alone, they're still angry. They're still blaming. At that point, they may be blaming the world. And that's why I say sometimes it's not anyone else. It's us. And that's why we have to go away to deal with us, that we can be the best individual we can be. I hope this video blessed you. I hope it helped you see some of the mechanisms of what we're up against when it comes to moving forward in our life. And I hope it helps you see that going away for a while, stepping away for a while, really isn't a bad thing. It's actually a big blessing. So until the next video, I hope you guys have an awesome day. God loves you. I love you. And I hope this established a little bit of peace in your life. Be blessed, you guys. Bye.